Hi and welcome to the Pole Shift News and the Magnetosphere Observatory. Guys, a little bit later on in the video we'll be taking a quick look at the TriMag data. It's the 17th, and as you know, on the roundabout that day we pull the SD card out, the TriMag and the Magneto, and we take a quick look at the data. And I've got to say, just quickly, a little spoiler, you know, there is a continuation in last month's anomaly that we've been observing. So before we get into that, just a big thanks to those few people that are supporting us on the Patreon account and the PayPal. And if you want to help support the observatory, you know, the links are down there in the description. So let's get on with it. So as you'll probably notice, we're looking at the TriMag data, and you'll notice that there's only 17 days, which is usually half the amount of data that's usually collected over the month, from the 17th to the 17th of the following month. And the reason for that is still unsure. I have got all the other data that goes with it, but if you're looking at, if you can see what you're looking at right now and just double the activity, it'll give you a roundabout idea of the last month's activity. And what we can see is early on in the chart, just like the month before, we saw the North Pole head east, and then you can see the spikes that are continuing that we was observing last month. I'll try and add the other 17 days of data. For some reason, there's a few things that my Excel program wouldn't do today, and I'm not sure why that is. But what we've got is obviously 17 days worth of data. We've got the end of the data that we're looking at here. So there's the 17 days in May or thereabouts that we've not got, but pretty much it's just a reproduction of what last month's was looking like. Give me a few days, I'll have a fiddle about with the Excel program and try and find out why it's doing this. The other thing is what you'll notice is the mag, the heading and the hour keys on the side of the chart aren't there, and for some reason it wouldn't let me remove what it was putting in the legend. So I'll update this over the next week or so. But you can see with just the data over the 17 days what's been going on over the magnetic North Pole, and pretty much same as last month, we're getting these big yonderings of movement easterly and then going back to west, and they're happening on multiple occasions. But when they do, just notice the spikes that we're looking at, because each one of those spikes isn't a mistake at all. It's taking something like 300 readings in each one of those spikes and then adding them to the compiled chart. So we know that this isn't a mistake. These aren't errors. They're actual recordings of the anomaly that's taking place. Now if we go back before a few months, we could see that the line was pretty much flat. We did on some occasions, like on this one going back to the 17th of the 2nd 2019 to the 14th of the 3rd, we can see some of the spikes. But what's different about the last 2 months is that the magnetic North Pole hasn't just been migrating westerly, it's been going back almost to the time of 2008's position. So we're seeing probably early indications of a weakening magnetic pole over there, and it could be an indication that we're getting very much close to that 40-degree mark where the poles leave the strong field lines and enter those weaker field lines. And if that is in the case, then it's not going to be long before we actually see possibly the magnetic reversal take place. Now something else that's very unusual is the similar pattern that we're seeing in the magnetosphere strength. And what's catching me out with regards to this is that the magnetosphere strength went up 1 microtesla last month, and it's gone up another microtesla or thereabouts this month as well. But we can see these spikes on the magnetosphere strength, but almost on the negative line. So when we get probably a peak on the movement of the magnetic North Pole, we're getting a dip in the magnetosphere strength around about that same time, and you can see these places where it's dipped on the magnetosphere strength. But in general, the magnetosphere strength is up by about 3 microteslas at the moment from the last 2 months, and you can see these spikes on the last 2 months readings that we've been picking up. And again, it's more than one reading to get that bandwidth on the chart. And if we just go back to the third month, we can see that these start around about 2 months ago, and you don't see these spikes like what we're getting now. Now, it shouldn't be uncommon really, because the magnetosphere is a component of the magnetic poles, or vice versa. So if we are seeing the two behave in the same way, then we know what we're looking at is actually what is taking place. So there is uptick in the behaviour of the magnetic north pole right now, and we're also seeing the same behaviour reflected with the magnetosphere, and that's exactly what we should be seeing, because like I say, they are a component of each other. So just a couple of other interesting facts before we leave the video is that M3 has now gone out to India. That left in the post this afternoon, and it should be there within the next week or two. And I believe over the next coming days we might have some data from M6, the Gold Coast, or maybe M5 in the Perth of mid-eastern Australia. So we're going to be getting data now, slowly drip feed through the whole of the month, so we don't just have to wait now until what the TriMag brings in. We've got 6 other magnetometers almost out there, bar one, which is obviously on its way now to India. And as the data comes in, guys, I will process that and get it up onto the website, and also just make a little brief notification on YouTube. The other thing that we're going to be doing some point at the midweek this week is getting back on the cloud chamber project. There's a couple of parts which are going to be ordered at some point, either this evening or tomorrow, to complete what we need now to get that put together. It would have been nice if we could have got together and purchased one of those 3D printers, but we'll do what we can at the moment. We have had one person offer if someone else wants to go off with them to put up for the 3D printer, and it just makes things a little bit more professional our end, guys. If we can build bespoke casings for things like the cloud generator, and we're going to need other components when we start the not the 3D laser, but the CO2 laser. We're going to need bespoke components for that, and that 3D printer can produce those for us. So if you want to chip in with that, then you're more than welcome to. What else is there to say? An interesting find, but I expected when we looked at the TriMag data we was going to see something similar to what we saw last month. All this is, guys, is an indication is that something really is taking part over now the northern hemisphere with regards to the magnetic north pole and its migration. I believe we have stepped up a gear, and we are starting to see some unique activity right now. So now more than ever is the time to start tuning in regularly to see what's going on, especially when we start getting regular data come from other locations now with the magnetometers that we've got around the world. It's just going to give us a heads up on a few things, like how fast is the Canadian pole decreasing in intensity, and how fast is the Siberian pole moving towards the equatorial region, and merging towards that Australian high intensity region. And we'll get an idea of when they come together. Now remember one thing, guys, is that the North Pole is oppositely opposed to what's over Australia right now, so they are very much attracting each other, and we could see a snap together at some point, and it could all take place during a few weeks time, or a few months time. We just don't know. But what we are seeing over the last 2 months is a rapid uptick, and this on the back of what NASA made an announcement on just after Christmas with the having to update the world magnetic map. Only tells us that things are definitely on the increase with regards to activity over the northern hemisphere, and we don't need the organisation like NASA or the European Space Agency to tell us that. If you remember, we came out and announced it nearly 2 months before NASA actually did update the world magnetic map. So we was on the case, talking about these magnetic jets that we were seeing, over the Northern Hemisphere well before NASA came out and said there'd been an uptick in the behaviour of and the movement of the magnetic North Pole. So, you know, we're very much ahead of the game in especially just releasing the information to the general public globally on this channel. So, you know, there's a good reason, if there's no other, for you to get behind us and support us and do, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, if we're not raising funds, it's just slowing us down with what we're doing here. You know, the more funds we can raise, the more we can do, and, you know, the more professional we can do it as well. So guys, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to say what I usually do. Guys, there is a link down there if you want to support us on Patreon. If Patreon's not for you, there's the PayPal link, and I'll say what I usually do. Enjoy your week, and I'll catch up with you some point in the mid, and I'll say what I normally do, which is bye for now.